transported here to the Shelby Police Department. We currently have representatives from all the agencies that are involved in this
In
investigation.
federal court, and we discussed that conditional plea with the victims of the Chabad shooting. It was important.
It's unclear when the school will reopen. Investigators now combing through a thumb drive and other electronic evidence.
I'm being told that when you send your child to a school, that they die in that school because...
Never used them, never planned to use them, and there's no evidence that he ever planned to use them.
White supremacy is a dangerous and hateful ideology that promotes the belief in the superiority of the white race over all other races. Let's delve into some of the most dangerous yet youngest white supremacists who were eventually set free. Number 4. Dylann Roof. Dylann Roof is a white supremacist who rose to notoriety in 2015 for carrying out a slaying attack on a historically black church in Charleston, South Carolina. The atrocity that Roof performed is widely regarded as being among the most heinous acts of domestic terrorism that have been undertaken in the U.S. in recent memory. Roof went to the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston on June 17, 2015 in the evening and engaged in a Bible study group there. After roughly an hour, he began firing his gun, ultimately claiming the lives of 9 people, including the pastor of the church, Clementa C. Pinckney. During the slaying, Roof reloaded his firearm, which was a .45 caliber handgun that he had lawfully bought several times. He was equipped with a handgun. Approximately 6 minutes were spent during the attack, and Roof was taken into custody the following day in North Carolina. Roof's intentions were very clear. He wanted to create a race war and harbored a deep-seated hatred for African Americans, which led him to carry out the act. During the weeks leading up to the attack, he had been posting racist messages and photographs of himself on social media, including some in which he was seen posing with the Confederate flag.
Would go into a place of worship and people were praying and kill them.
Men and asked, where's the minister?
He asked that.
He asked, where's the minister? The kind, spirited person that he is.
After he was taken into custody, he admitted to carrying out the slayings and told investigators that he intended to sow the seeds of racial strife and eventually start a race war. Roof was charged with a total of 33 federal crimes, the most serious of which were hate crimes that resulted in slaying and the obstruction of religious expression that resulted in demise. In December of 2016, he was found guilty of all charges and given the demise sentence as a punishment. In April of 2017, he entered a guilty plea to state slaying charges in exchange for the possibility of serving his whole sentence in jail without the possibility of release. To this day, Dylann Roof remains incarcerated and cannot be released from his sentence. He is still serving a sentence on Penalty Row at the U.S. Penitentiary in Terre Haute, which is a federal prison in Indiana with maximum security.
You spoke with one of 3 survivors? There were 3 total?
Yes.
And what did she tell you?
Through it. It's tough times, but I know for a fact everybody will press on.
He was transported here to the Shelby Police Department. We currently have representatives from all the agencies that are involved in this investigation.
Stronger than hate. So if we just love the way my mom would, then the hate won't be.
Number 3. John Earnest. In 2019, white supremacist John Earnest launched an attack on a synagogue in Poway, California, committing a crime motivated by bigotry in the process. It is believed that his act was a symbol of the continuous threat of white supremacy and domestic terrorism in the U.S., and that this threat was caused by his act. Earnest entered the Chabad of Poway synagogue on April 27, 2019, armed with an attack-style rifle, and started fire, resulting in the demise of 1 individual and the injury of 3 others, including a little girl. The attack took place in the middle of a Passover ceremony, during which a significant number of the attendees were either elderly or children. Earnest was taken into custody not long after the attack, and he was subsequently charged with a number of offenses, including slaying and hate crimes. White supremacist ideas were at the heart of Earnest's decision to carry out the attack he planned. In a manifesto that was published online before the attack, he detailed his long-held animosity towards Jewish people, Muslims, and other members of underrepresented groups. He also cited the inspiration of past white nationalist crimes, such as the mass slaying that took place at a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, just a few weeks earlier.
Of a life in prison. For the families, a day of justice rendered.
that may or may not do anything.
Did a pretty exhaustive investigation along with the FBI and allied agencies, and there's a lot of statements of witnesses.
And Ernest will be officially sentenced on September 30th to life in prison without the...
In federal court, and we discussed that conditional plea with the victims of the Chabad shooting. It was important.
Ernest was tried on multiple charges, but in the end he was found guilty of all of them. He was given a sentence of life in jail without the chance of parole. He showed no remorse for his conduct and maintained his white nationalist convictions throughout the entirety of his trial and sentence process. There is no evidence that John Ernest will be granted parole at this time, nor is there any sign that he has been freed from prison. The events surrounding his case serve as a jarring illustration of the persistent danger posed by white supremacy and domestic terrorism in the U.S. The attack on the Poway synagogue was not an isolated occurrence. Rather, it was a part of a larger pattern of hate crimes and violent extremism that continues to represent a threat to American civilization. The synagogue was targeted because of its association with the Jewish faith. Number 2, William Atchison. In 2017, a man named William Atchison, who was 21 years old at the time, carried out a slaying rampage at a high school located in Aztec, New Mexico. The atrocity committed by Atchison is a heartbreaking illustration of the persistent danger posed by gun violence and acts of domestic terrorism in the U.S. Atchison went to Aztec High School on the 7th of December 2017, bringing a 9mm pistol and additional ammunition with him. He opened fire without targeting anyone in particular, ultimately taking the lives of 2 classmates before turning the gun on himself. The attack on the Aztec town lasted for less than a minute, yet it had a terrible effect on the population.
I was walking in late, 5 minutes late, and I walked upstairs past the bathroom that shooter, the very back, and I was already underneath my desk.
When I get home, in case he's not gonna be there.
It's unclear when the school will reopen. Investigators now combing through a thumb drive and other electronic evidence.
The gun he used was a Glock pistol that he purchased locally. He worked at a local gas station, and he planned this thing.
Atchison was not known to have any connections to the victims or the school, and it is currently unknown what motivated him to carry out the act. Atchison's online actions revealed the extent of his obsession with white nationalist ideology and incidents of mass slayings. On social media, he had posted under the name Cruz David, referring to the slayer who had committed the mass slaying at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, earlier that year, where he had slayed 17 people. Atchison reportedly indicated a desire to become a school slayer in a high school in an internet forum, and he mentioned the tragedy that took place at Columbine High School multiple times. The crime committed by Atchison rekindled discussions on gun control and the part that white racism plays in acts of domestic terrorism. His attack was just one of several mass slayings that took place in 2017, a year that witnessed a record number of such occurrences in the U.S. 2017 was the year when his attack was one of several that took place. William Atchison was not allowed to go free since he took his own life at the scene of the attack where he was arrested.
Active shooter type of gaming websites, a lot of different things out there. Occasionally we'll get tips from other people heard in this one. It was not a specific threat. It wasn't about initial investigative steps. They ended up tying back to him, and that's what led us to interview him.
And being told that when you send your child to school, that they die in that school because...
Something along those lines. It was very generic, not a specific threat.
Number 1, Brandon Russell. Brandon Russell is a former member of the Florida National Guard who was arrested in May 2017 on federal charges related to possessing and manufacturing explosive materials. His case is noteworthy because of his connection to a white supremacist group and the discovery of a cache of weapons and explosives in his apartment. Russell's arrest came after police responded to a call from his roommate, who reported finding several suspicious items in their apartment. When police arrived, they discovered a large amount of ammunition, several firearms, and explosive materials.
Argued inside this courthouse today that he is a risk to the community if he's released. They him away from being any kind of threat. Those conditions include no access to internet or cell phone.
Never used them, never planned to use them, and there's no evidence that he ever planned to use them.
Weapons. He'd also have to live with his grandmother in Orlando and be monitored by a GPS device.
but taking steps to fulfill their threats and further their extremist goals.
They also found a framed photo of Timothy McVeigh, the domestic terrorist who carried out the 1995 Oklahoma City destroyed with explosives. Following the discovery of the weapons and explosives, Russell was arrested and charged with possessing a destructive device, unlawful storage of explosive materials, and possession of a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence. He was also charged with 2 counts of illegal possession of a firearm due to a prior conviction for domestic violence that prohibited him from owning firearms. During the investigation, it was revealed that Russell was a member of the Atomwaffen Division, a white supremacist group that advocates for a race war to overthrow the government. The group is known for its violent rhetoric and has been linked to several slayings and hate crimes. In addition to his connection to the Atomwaffen Division, Russell was also found to have made several online purchases of neo-Nazi and white supremacist propaganda, including a white resistance manual and a book on explosive making. In May 2018, Russell pleaded guilty to the federal charges against him and was sentenced to 5 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. As part of his plea agreement, Russell cooperated with law enforcement and provided information about the Atomwaffen Division and its members. Russell's case is notable for several reasons. First, it highlights the ongoing threat of white supremacist extremism in the United States and the danger posed by individuals who espouse violent and hateful ideologies. Second, it underscores the importance of effective law enforcement efforts to identify and disrupt domestic terrorist groups before they can carry out violent acts. Finally, it demonstrates the severe consequences that individuals can face for possessing and manufacturing explosive materials, even if they have not carried out an attack. It is important to note that Brandon Russell has not been set free. As of May 2023, he remains incarcerated, serving his sentence in a federal prison. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time.